Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Jim Ewing with Provision Solutions. We've enjoyed sharing insights, inspiration, and informative updates through our Marketplace Ministries events. Whether in person or virtual, there's been a wealth of great resources provided. Details are provided in the comments below, along with information on staying informed of upcoming events and interacting with others online. We trust you'll enjoy the segment and invite you to be a part of our Marketplace Ministries Network. We'd love to have you as part of our collaborative Christian community. Thanks. And now, here's our presentation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us. It's a delight to have you with us, and it's another delight to have our guest speaker with us. Helen spoke at a recent in-person meeting of the Marketplace Ministries Network and delighted the crowd with her legal expertise. And I am delighted that she is able to join us here now to capture a few of those similar thoughts. So, Helen, thank you so much for being with us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll get right into your presentation.
Hi, my name is Helen Werbicki. I'm a lawyer with Emery Jameson LLP. Before I became a lawyer, I worked for 16 years for my parents managing their businesses. And so I have some experience with small businesses and financial statements. Before that, I was a teacher in Japan for 4 years. I have a husband and 2 kids who keep me mostly sane and 2 cats who keep me mostly insane. So there's a good balancing act going on there. And I'm talking to you today about starting a business. And roughly our agenda for today will be talking about business ethics, types of business vessels in Alberta, the importance of guidance, components of a corporation, business plans, workers or employees and managers, charity, taxes and debt, and then a conclusion. And just as a proviso, this is not meant to be legal advice, it's just legal information. So I do have to make that distinction there. So first, we're going to talk very briefly about business ethics, and that is that there are no such thing as business ethics for a Christian. There are ethics, which are informed by the rules of society around you, and your morals, which come from your ethics, personal beliefs, and cultural backgrounds. Your business ethics should never allow you to do what your personal morals would not. I'm going to say that again because it's really critical. Your business ethics should never allow you to do what your personal morals would not allow you to do. They might be different for people around you, and you'll hear that, well, it's just business. They cannot be different for you. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, it's just business, you need to check yourself and go and have some prayer time. What happens if you don't follow the same ethics in your business and your personal life? There's mental and spiritual distress for you, and potentially a poor, if not negative, witness for Christ. I have come across many, many people who have said that they are Christian. They don't act like they're Christian in business. And I've thought to myself, if I weren't already Christian and knew the truth of that, I would really not be interested. So, okay, so end of the sermon. I'll get off my little soapbox. But God has a perspective on business ethics as well. It's in the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy 25:13-16. He says, "You shall not have in your bag 2 kinds of weights, a large and a small. You shall not have in your house 2 kinds of measures, a large and a small. A full and fair weight you shall have, a full and fair measure you shall have, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. For all who do such things, all who act dishonestly, are an abomination to the Lord your God." And then again in the New Testament, in Matthew 6:24, he says, "No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." So in Alberta, we have different types of business vessels. You have a sole proprietorship, which is where you run your business as yourself. That means that the entire risk of your corporation or your business is entirely on you, individually, no buffers. If you incorporate, you birth a new legal person, your corporation. That corporation is entitled to have its own contracts. It can make its own agreements. It has its own risk profile. You can have professional corporations, which are only for dentists, lawyers, engineers, and so far. or so forth, which is generally people who have some kind of regulatory body overseeing them. You can have a company, which is a nonprofit organization with less than 5 founding members, or a society, which is a nonprofit organization with 5 or more founding members. It's really important to note that with these nonprofit organizations, just because you incorporate a company or society, that doesn't automatically give you a Canada Revenue Agency charitable registration. And those are actually getting very, very difficult to come by.
Helen, can I maybe ask you, because one of the questions that I often get as I talk with entrepreneurs is, and I'm sure you've had it too, is what structure should I take for the organization or the business that I have in mind?
It sort of depends. So ideally, you'd have different people helping you decide, and it depends on what you want to do with it. So if you want to run a soup kitchen that's nonprofit, you're not going to want to set up a corporation. You are going to want to set up a company or a society. If you're, generally speaking, what I hear from accountants is if your company has less than $100,000 of income a year, as a professional, then you don't necessarily need to incorporate a professional corporation. If you want some of that, the protection that a corporation gives to you versus your personal assets, then you may want to think about incorporating just to put that distinction in between the two. There's also some good write-offs you can get through your incorporation, such as one that a lot of people don't know about are health spending accounts, which allow you to pay off your dental bills or whatever else via your company. So those are all things to consider when you're looking at an incorporation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so other things that you can consider when you're looking at a corporation or incorporating, you may have an operating company, which runs the day-to-day operations, and a holding company, which holds most of the assets of the business venture. Especially with that, you want to talk to an accountant or a tax advisor in terms of what's best for you, because you have to remember that there's costs associated with each company you incorporate. They each have their own set of taxes, and you're probably going to want to have an accountant help you with that. They each have their own sets of registrations they have to use each year. You can incorporate federally under Canadian law or provincially under provincial law. And if you want to operate in other provinces, you have to continue the corporation into that province, even if you've incorporated under Canadian law. In terms of guidance, how do you figure out which type of business vessel and type of corporation or nonprofit is for you? And this is what we were just discussing. You ask. Ideally, at the start of your business venture, you would have at least a lawyer and an accountant or tax advisor you trust. And at best, you would also have a financial advisor, whether that's from your bank or outside your bank, and possibly a business coach. Why, you ask? Because we can keep you from getting yourself into difficult situations a lot more easily than we can get you out of them afterwards. You don't know how many times I've had somebody come to me and say, "Here, lawyer, fix this." And I look at it and go, I have no idea what to do with what you just gave me. So this is also in the Bible, in Proverbs in 2 different places, 11:14 and 15:22. It says, "For lack of guidance, a nation falls, but victory is won through many advisors." And then again, it says, "Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed."
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. And certainly I recommend having a team of professionals that you can go to, a circle of advisors, trusted advisors in these different disciplines, because not all of us are lawyers, not all of us are accountants, and some of us are neither.
Yep. Yep. And it is considered an investment. It would be a business expense, but that is investing in your corporation. So at least that's how I see it. So components of corporation, you have shareholders, which can be voting or non-voting, and you can have common and preferred. So preferred means that there's usually a set value on that share, and when the company winds up, they get paid out first. Then the common shareholders take part in whatever is left over afterwards. You have directors who manage the day-to-day operations, and they have a fiduciary duty to the corporation, which means they have to act in its best interest, not in their own best interests. And in that, I have Matthew 7:12. "So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets." You also have signing officers, who are people in addition to the directors, or could be the same as the directors, who are authorized to sign certain documents. You have an agent for service. That's a requirement under the legislation where these people can be served with court documents. And you have a registered office, which must be open to the public during normal business hours. And I really strongly suggest you do not want to make this your home, because that opens your home up to whoever is entitled to come in and look at your documents, which can include CRA. And most people don't want CRA in their house.
I don't know if you've got a choice, though. If they choose to do an audit on your records, you kind of have to share that with them, don't you?
You do have to share it with them, but you don't have to have it in your house. So you can have your registered office. Most lawyers will offer to be the registered office, and it usually costs somewhere between usually around $300 to $500 a year, but they do everything for you. They file your annual returns. They do up all of your resolutions that you need. So you don't have to worry about keeping your minute book up to date. They do that. Otherwise, yeah, if you have it as your house, then potentially CRA can come to your house. Otherwise, they have to go to your lawyer's office and we have to deal with them for you.
I wonder if it would go better for you if you offered them a cup of coffee and a donut.
They might see it as a bribe. I don't know.
Over to you. I don't know.
Common documents that you have with a corporation. There's the initial incorporation documents that say that you have birthed this legal entity. There's the minute book that holds those documents. It's required by the Business Corporations Act, and there are certain documents required by the Act to be in it. Annual maintenance, which are the shareholder resolutions and director resolutions, are required to be in there. It also deals with specific matters that the Act requires on that annual basis, such as deciding who are the directors, are the financial statements of the corporation accepted, is there an auditor or accountant appointed? And a note on that, if you actually appoint an auditor or an accountant in the minutes, then it requires the highest, which is the most expensive type of financial statements. So we usually suggest that people leave that part out unless you're really determined to have that high level. There's also bylaws in terms of how the corporation is going to conduct itself. The unanimous shareholders agreement just sets out, it's kind of like a contract between the shareholders in terms of how they're going to deal with various, usually contentious situations. So arguments that come up. That can include if a shareholder dies, if they get divorced, if they are sick of the group and they just want to get out. So it's also important to have a business plan. In Ecclesiastes 3:1, it says there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A business is the same. There's a time for everything, and if there's a time for it, there's a plan you can put in place around it. So I'd suggest that you have at least 3 components of your business plan: your start, your growth and maintenance, and then your exit.
That's thinking further down the road than a lot of entrepreneurs ever get their heads around.
Yeah, but I strongly recommend it, especially if it's an involuntary exit strategy, such as you have passed away. It's really important to have a will in place so that is, you've thought about who can deal with that for you. And that just protects, well, it's basically good stewardship. So
absolutely.
So if you think about Pharaoh and Joseph and the famine in Egypt, preparing for the drought, Joseph proved that he had knowledge and wisdom. So Pharaoh put him in charge of the massive project of ensuring the people in Egypt survived that famine. At the start, Joseph identified the issue requiring a business plan and response. He set up a maintenance plan and put systems in place to prepare for and deal with the issue. Then he trained people to utilize and maintain the system. Then he had an exit plan. He used the systems to carry Egypt through the issue, and then he wound it down once it was done. Okay? So in terms of the start, when is the time to start? And you need to think about that. Jesus had a set time to start. It was when John was imprisoned. Start by asking yourself questions. What information do I need? Why am I doing this? What do I want to accomplish? How am I going to achieve goals? What business vehicle is best for this, and how will I measure my progress? And again, this is in Numbers 13:70-20. When Moses sent them to explore Canaan, he said, "Go up through Negev and on into the hill country." See what the land is like and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? How is the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruit of the land. It was the season for the first ripe grapes. So Moses knew when he was starting this campaign, he needed more information because the information he got back was going to change how he approached the issue. So in terms of maintenance, how are you going to build your business? How will you sustain it without killing yourself with stress or damaging your relationship with your family? Where do you need to look for the people to help you? And one thing that I will need to note in here, if you're getting any kind of a loan or you incur a debt of any description, you'll most likely need a personal guarantee. And a personal guarantee kind of destroys the whole purpose of having an incorporation.
Those bankers.
So, yeah, I hate them. I know they're necessary as part of business, but we try to limit them as much as possible. So what a personal guarantee does, you've got this legal entity or corporation, and if you have a debt that's owing, creditors are limited to the assets within the corporation. But as soon as you sign a personal guarantee, you pop open that company and you allow your creditors to come through the company to you and your personal assets. Like I said, I hate them. They are usually required, but please talk to a lawyer before you sign them because sometimes we can help you to limit your liability under it.
Yeah. Can I just jump in at that point? Because I come from a banking background years ago. And when I was doing business counseling after I left the bank, this aspect of guarantees, just as you've indicated, that's a frustration for a lot of entrepreneurs tying themselves personally to the obligations of the business, which they've incorporated for the purpose of separating it from themselves. One of the things that I suggested to some of the entrepreneurs that I've met is have a conversation with your financial institution about around the question of at what point would it be reasonable for the financial institution to remove the requirement for a personal guarantee, or at least to perhaps limit the liability that might be attached to it, if that were possible, instead of being 100% unlimited personal guarantee to maybe a fixed amount that would be predetermined. And do you have any thoughts on that, Helen? Has that come up in conversations you've had with entrepreneurs, business people?
Yeah, particularly with limiting the guarantee, I've had to fight with banks on that before because they want an unlimited guarantee. But if you're borrowing $25,000, it makes no sense whatsoever to have an unlimited guarantee because the odds that you're going to incur enough interest and legal fees to run that up to like $100,000 or $200,000 is ridiculous. So I've said before, like I've fought with banks before and been successful where you said, look, the loan is for this amount. Put in this amount plus reasonable legal fees and like plus interest and reasonable legal fees to enforce.
Yeah.
And then that's a reasonable guarantee.
Yeah.
But just saying unlimited and we can go at you for however much we want. The other one that I've run into sometimes is the banks will try to sneak in an unlimited personal guarantee for all debts that are owed by the business person for anything that they have with that bank. And that I will tell my clients, like, absolutely do not sign this. Because then you're saying personally for anything that's they've got unsecured at the moment, they can then use that to come back at you for, even though it was like something from 10 years ago that you signed or a loan you took out 10 years ago that was not guaranteed at that point. They can try and tie it underneath this personal guarantee. So I will tell them, do not sign this. Like, go back and tell them, what are you trying to do to me? So, and then in terms of your exit, think about what are your benchmarks ahead of time to decide when it's time to exit. What were your purposes? If your purpose was to build something that you could pass as a legacy asset to your kids and grandkids, you need to set it up properly at the start with the right type of share structure to allow you to do so. I've had businesses before where they self-incorporated and they only issued one share, and they said they were only ever allowed to issue one share. which means that you can't take advantage of a bunch of the accounting and tax plans in place to allow people to transfer that to the next generation. So just talk to a lawyer first before you incorporate. Think about what will show you when it's time to pass control of your corporation to the next generation. How are you going to be confident that your kids or grandkids can run the corporation? If your purpose was to build something you could eventually sell to someone else, then you need to ensure that all your documents, contracts, and so forth are in order and clear to add value and make the sale easier. Or are you just going to wind it down when it served its purpose? There's a right way and a wrong way of doing that. The right way gives CRA 2 years notice to make any investigations. The wrong way leaves it open to CRA to go in after it however long it wants to. So the wrong way, I will tell you right now, is to allow it to be struck from the registry because you haven't done your annual returns. The right way is to ask a lawyer to help you wind it up and send notice that this is being wound up. And then think about what protections are you going to put in place to ensure your family has an asset and not a massive debt if you die unexpectedly. And this also goes for if you are unexpectedly mentally incapacitated, so that you can't make your own financial decisions. So in that case, you really need to talk to your lawyer about estate planning, and you need to think about having a life insurance policy that would cover the debts in the corporation to make sure that you still have something left over for your family afterwards. In terms of workers or employees, under both Alberta law and God's law, you have a responsibility to the workers you hire. It's best to have a good employment agreement with your workers, so it sets out expectations on both sides, and it saves you a lot of trouble when the business relationship is at an end. The employer is required to contribute to the employee's Canada Pension Plan and employment insurance. They also collect contributions from the employee for these. It's really important to remember that this is not your money. Even if it's the portion that the business is contributing, it's not the business's money. It's the employee's money held in trust for the government. And the government takes it really, really seriously when you don't submit the payments. They can even go after the directors for up to 6 months worth of employee wages and contributions. So in terms of finding employees, you may headhunt them if you think they would be an asset, and there are companies that do that for you, or they may be people that you already know. You may find them through a hiring agency or through advertisements you put in place, and you may find them through networking. Trust them and give them the tools to succeed, but also have plans in place in case they're not trustworthy. So Jesus had 11 disciples who carried on his work, and the 12th, there were plans in place to deal with that, even though it kind of looked like a disaster at the beginning, I think. It's important to remember that God loves your employees. However much they might drive you crazy once in a while, God loves your employees. In Leviticus 19:13, he says, "You shall not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of a hired worker shall not remain with you all night until the morning." And in Deuteronomy, he says, "You shall not oppress a hired worker who is poor or needy, whether he is one of your brothers," so Canadians or permanent residents, "or one of the sojourners who are in your land within your towns," so foreign workers. "You shall give him his wages on the same day before the sun sets, for he is poor and counts on it, lest he cry against you to the Lord and you be guilty of sin." In terms of managers, you may find people who you believe you can trust to run your business, like Joseph or the disciples, but they will only succeed if you give them the tools for success, such as letting them know what your expectations are and how you're measuring those expectations. They will not succeed if you are failing in your praise and are always critical of their mistakes. Their mistakes are your failing for not training them properly. There will be people who are out to get you and do not have your best interests at heart or those of your business. And so you may also wish to consider fraud insurance. Very often that will come within a commercial insurance package. A few final thoughts on charity. In Luke 3:11, Jesus said, "If you have 2 coats, give one away," he said, "and do the same with your food." It's not giving the shirt off your back, it's giving out of your excess. Support others as you are called to do. With regards to taxes, in Mark 12:17, he asked his disciples to look at a coin and asked whose picture was on it. And they said, "Caesar's." Then he said to them, "So give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. Our government uses taxes to, among other things, provide for the poor, the elderly, and children. Use an accountant and pay what is owed, but there's no issue with using the exemptions and allowance that the government's put in place, because these are also designed to help small businesses succeed." In terms of a conclusion, you have a responsibility to use what abilities, talents, and assets you have to God's glory. Think of the parable of the talents. In Matthew 10:16, Jesus said, "Listen carefully, I am sending you out like sheep among wolves, so be wise as serpents and innocent as doves." I interpret that as know your Bible and your God, as the serpent in Eden did, because he most certainly did, but use that knowledge to be blameless in God's sight under Christ's blood. And then just as a final note, I told people during our live meeting, and I wanted to make sure that we had this on the recording as well, your business might fail. That doesn't mean that you have failed, because you don't know what purpose God actually had for your business. You might find that the entire purpose of your business from God's view was to reach out to your janitor that nobody else can reach. But this refugee lady is in your office. She doesn't speak that much English, but she knows that you know her name and you say good morning to her each day. And because of that, maybe she will understand at some point that there is a God who knows her by name. Just because your business failed, it doesn't mean that God's purpose failed, and it doesn't mean that you failed.
That's a great note to conclude your presentation on. Thank you, Helen.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, Helen, I appreciate so much the value of your time and sharing it with our in-person group, as well as those that are connecting in online or by viewing the video after the fact. Thank you so much for sharing these insights that will be very helpful to anyone who's looking at setting up a business, a ministry area, or perhaps some sort of a organization, not-for-profit, as the case may be. Thank you very much.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being with us. We trust you found this to be helpful. And if so, please give us a like, a follow, and a share. The Bible says in Matthew, "Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." If you're launching or growing a business, a ministry area, or a special project, or if you're involved in helping them as a resource or service provider, we'd love to have you participate with us. Stay informed of upcoming events and items of interest by subscribing to the Marketplace Ministries Update, sent out periodically. May God bless you as you do your best to faithfully represent Jesus Christ in the marketplaces of life.